little after 12, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started and certainly welcome everyone to our second installment of what we're calling our series now, Leading Forward, Empowering Emerging Leaders Across Industries. I'm Eileen Coombs, the education lead at Delegate Solutions, and I'll be serving as your host today. At Delegate Solutions, developing emerging leaders has quickly become a passion of ours. Over the past 17 years, we've partnered with countless leaders to help them essentially reclaim their time and refocus on what truly matters to them. And as we've been doing that kind of work, I've noticed a really significant gap in how companies are supporting their rising stars and noticing it across all different industries. So it's really clear to me that emerging leaders need that support early on so that they can lead with intention and prioritize strategic goals effectively. And I really believe by investing in their development early on, you're not just preparing them for the immediate today activities, but you're really setting the stage for organizational success in the future. And so that's why I'm thrilled that we're here today, that we're delving into this topic where we can talk about really the critical aspects of leadership development. I want to really focus today on onboarding, ongoing support like mentorship and coaching, and the importance of having a beginner's mindset. And so we have some great panelists today who are going to share their insights and experiences as they've navigated these developmental areas with the emerging leaders that they work with or have supported in the past. And so that's why I'm really excited that they're all here. So I want to introduce them. I want to begin by welcoming Dr. Paige Viren, the Executive Director of Sustainable Hospitality and Tourism Management at the College of Business at Cal State Monterey Bay. Paige has over 16 years of experience in tourism research, and she specializes in adventure travel and sustainable community-based tourism. She has worked extensively with rural communities to promote economic diversification while preserving natural and cultural resources. A recognized expert, Paige has collaborated with organizations like the Adventure Travel Trade Association and the United Nations World Tourism Organization. And she is also a U.S. State Department speaker who has presented strategies for expanding adventure and ecotourism globally. So welcome, Paige. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. Next, I want to introduce Jackie Lesser, a leadership career coach based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Jackie is the founder of Creating Impact LLC, a leadership center, a leadership career coaching company, working with those who are committed to being the change they want to make. She brings 2 decades of coaching expertise, offering guidance, accountability, and a vast inventory of transformational tools to support clients along their leadership journey. Jackie draws from decades of industry experience and strong insight into human behavior to create the space necessary for deepening the learning and forming the action for positive personal and collective change. And I'm thrilled to have Jackie back with us today for the panel. So welcome, Jackie.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, our lone male on the panel today, Alex Marin. Alex is a leader in the hospitality industry, spanning multiple brands across many of the country's largest markets. His current role is general manager at the Asilomar Conference Grounds, which is located in Pacific Grove, California. Asilomar is an Aramark Destinations property and a nationally historic registered site owned by the state of California. So it's an interesting dynamic, Alex. Alex's past experience includes being the creator and proprietor of several award-winning food and beverage concepts, including brick and mortar restaurants and even food trucks. Alex's journey has been chronicled on the Food Network and in 2 cookbooks, which is kind of cool. So thank you for joining us, Alex.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I also want to make sure to recognize Mackenzie Lyons, who's on. She's from our team at Delegate, and we'll be kind of ensuring everything runs smoothly backstage. But as you are listening in, if you have questions or need help, just throw it in the chat and Mackenzie will be happy to help. So as always, thank you, Mackenzie. I don't know what I would do without you. All right, so I want to just dive into the conversation because I'm super excited about this panel and what we're going to talk about. And I really want to begin with the sort of what I think are the really critical early stages of a rising leader's development. So what I want to ask the panelists is, in your experience, what are the most common challenges new leaders face during that first 90 days? And how can organizations better support them during that critical, like, transitional period? So Jackie, can I put you on the spot to get the conversation going?
Sure, sure. I would say that the most common challenges are feeling like a deer in the headlights, like, oh my God, I didn't change companies, but I don't know the landscape anymore, having unclear expectations. That's a real, that's a real big one. Um, and wanting to perform like really quickly, like that, wanting to like, oh, you promoted me, I got this job, now I need to like get out of the gate, really fast and running. So those are the challenges that a lot of new leaders, emerging leaders come into. I think that in terms of support, like just to clear expectations, like really clear, expectations would be great. I also think that some agreements about how to be together, right? Like this emerging leader has never been in this role before. So what are they going to need from their mentor, their coach, their boss, their peers, just having these conversations, and also saying for the people who are the mentor, the coach, the boss, the peers, this is what I'm going to need from you. This is what you're going to need from me. And just having, coming to some really great understood agreements. And I think the other thing is like regular check-ins. Like I think so often I've seen that it's like, oh, you're in a new job. There's the deep end, just going in. So, so some really kind of structured check-ins to not only how are you doing, but like really specific. Here are the expectations. How are you measuring against those? What do you need from me? What else can I do for you? Those kinds of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of the clarity piece. I thought was really important. I once heard someone say being clear is kind. So if you're not setting the parameters clearly, you're not setting them up for success and creating that pathway to grow. So I love that.
I think coming into a new role too, you should expect for someone not to give you a roadmap, a perfect roadmap for that new role. So a lot of times self-identification, understanding who you are, what your strengths are, and also where you need to improve. And then, from a managing up and down perspective, understanding what questions to ask so that you can create that roadmap for yourself organically with your leadership. Sometimes people do things instinctively, and maybe that's not necessarily something they're putting pen to paper on. So modeling yourself after a contemporary, understanding how your boss functions and why they put you in that role, and then asking correct questions for guidance will help you be successful in that role. But it all starts with self-identification and really understanding why you're there and how you got there and what your potential is. I always find that to be something that people struggle with.
And I think there's this whole balancing of, there's the immediate onboarding, but balancing that with kind of a long-term strategy. So, the roadmap needs to be fluid and able to change, but I don't think it's like, here's all the things we have to get done, you're here, and then it stops, right? It has to be really balanced. And I think a big piece of that is also helping the new person navigate team dynamics, because we need to kind of understand individual and team dynamics, I think, and providing someone with the strength, weaknesses, and even previous challenges. That transparency, Alex,
Yes.
during that onboarding is pretty important. So maybe it's when you bring somebody in, offering team assessments or performance histories, can give that new leader a foundation for kind of understanding the team members and structuring really effective, performance management. So setting somebody up for success, but it's not come in, I hand you the welcome packet, and then I leave you, what are kind of next steps from there. So
that's true. And I have found, and I often tell my own management team as they, are placed in new roles and new positions, they kind of build their careers within the organizational structure here. I said, you know what, you're fresh eyes. keep your list and just keep adding to your list of things you want to see change. It helps you build that direction. It helps you build that long-term strategy. And then it reminds you 6 months later of what you saw when you first got here. You can self-assess of how well you've done in kind of creating that change over time. And then you can say, wow, I haven't even touched this, and that still needs to be fixed. And what is my strategy around that? Keep that list going. I mean, and don't let it come off your radar, because what you see in that beginning as fresh eyes, sometimes it's wrong, but a lot of times there's an instinct there, an intuition there as you enter into the role, and you don't want to lose sight of that based on your operational demand.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And I'm curious, because we've kind of started dabbling in this area, but why is onboarding important? And I'm curious, Paige, I kind of want to put you on the spot for this one, because you're helping educate these future leaders going into the workforce. And I'm curious why you think onboarding is important, what elements you think are essential to help, set these new leaders up for success.
I think especially for, newer leaders, we're here to kind of educate and inspire the next generation of leaders. So how can we set them up for success? And I think having a clear pathway in the onboarding process really allows these emerging individuals to build relationships early on. It helps to clarify expectations, and I think it reduces some of the ambiguity and I think some of the anxiety that might go along with this. We have a group of young people coming into the workforce who, might have more experience with anxiety. Think of some of all of the world issues that are going on. So I think we really need to set clear expectations, be transparent. And in doing so, I think we can really focus on retention and job satisfaction. And those are pretty important. And we look at that here, what's persistence with students? How can we support students so that they're successful, so they finish their degree? So we could think about that in terms of a job. We want them to stay on. You're investing time in hiring somebody. It takes a lot of energy to hire somebody. You get them in, you do the onboarding, and then they leave. I mean, that's a waste of money, right? So we need to make sure that we're kind of fostering success and, making sure that we're asking questions and, doing regular check-ins, because you want to make sure, are things going correct? And I think of it, even though it's a job, I think of it in the semester, we have like our midterm exam, and I kind of do a midterm check-in, and then we have at the end of the semester, let's say, how did things go? What should we keep doing? What should we stop doing? What should we start doing? And kind of doing those check-ins, not after a year, not after they've been there a year, how are things going, but kind of doing those in small chunks. I think that might be a way to capitalize on your investment, because really when you hire somebody, you're investing in a person. So how can you encourage them? Do they need a learning plan? Do they need, training? And how can we support their success? So I think those kind of check-ins, being part of the onboarding and kind of continuous learning is pretty important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jackie, what would you add to that as you're thinking?
I would just say, it's really, really, just practically speaking, it's really, really expensive to have turnover. I mean, it's just, if you actually look at those numbers, you'd be astounded. And so to create this program to make sure that the emerging leader has a support system, I see it in companies all the time. I see the ones with a really good onboarding process and the ones without an onboarding process, and they're miles apart from each other. Mm-hmm. So I think that, that level of support, and for the emerging leader to know that you have a go-to, and to learn that navigation system, like Alex and Paige were talking about, how do we navigate in this brand new territory? Even though I've worked in this company before, it's brand new territory. So I think it's really important to have, that's why it's so important to have that kind of support system.
You hit on something I was thinking about. I joined this team here in Pacific Grove about 7 months ago. And, I have very tenured management that have been here in their roles, well, not in their specific roles, but have been in management roles at this location for 30 years, 25 to 30 years, which is unheard of oftentimes in the hospitality industry. And, I am very conscientious of the individual. Our Aramark has fantastic onboarding, and really great leadership development, a lot of programming to help teach like management skills and all these wonderful resources. But ultimately, it comes down to the individual and how you're able to communicate. Are you reading the room? Are you speaking the same language? So when I address and talk to these leaders that have been here for 30 years, I have a very different tone, a very different perspective, and I make sure to acknowledge their level of experience and talk to them about what some of their goals are and let them be a part of their own growth because they have that like level of experience. On the flip side, a new leader that is coming from an hourly to a management role, a salaried role, and there's a different kind of learning curve and a different learning style. So what I try to do is impart my approach and show them how I tailor my communication individually to each person. It's just part of being a caring person, a caring leader. And I think, connecting with the individual. And if you're saying something and you're asking something of someone, they need to understand the immediacy, the need, and they need to kind of read through a little bit further what that instruction is, right? So we like to talk in like very quick snippets, but there's usually a larger picture there, with the direction of one sentence. So making sure we're all on the same page there.
And that context is important to understand how even those little things they may be stepping into, how they layer up and create like a bigger impact on the larger organizational goals. So those small snippets sometimes definitely need to be more deeper so that they can have a sense of ownership and understanding of the culture and what they're doing.
And I just have to comment, I like what Paige, said as far as, showing them what future growth looks like. And sometimes future growth is the next role. And sometimes future growth is just, being more effective and impactful in your current role. Mm-hmm. So it just depends on where you are in your career path and always showing someone what's in it for them. That usually connects.
Yeah. Staying on that onboarding topic, are there any best practices that each of you have seen that have been implemented that really have supported new leaders in their journey in that onboarding phase in particular? Any you would recommend? I know we have a lot of people listening who are trying to develop their emerging leaders and just don't know how or where to go. So curious what best practices you've seen.
So
go ahead.
I would just say that, depending on how many leaders are, emerging at the same time, right? If there's a group of people, then that level of camaraderie, if you group them and you bring them into classes and you offer them some mentors, some coaching, like, some kind of group activity, that feels really good to them. To emerging leaders, it's like coming into college, right? For the first time, you're joining a sorority or a fraternity or something like that, a club of some sort where you feel like you belong to something that is part of something bigger. So I would say that's really important. And just the other thing that the other best practices would be, and I know we'll probably cover this, but assigning a mentor and or a coach. That is not necessarily the person you report to. It's a talent. So I would say that. And also, and this isn't like necessarily anything that that's written, but best practices, when the culture can communicate the grace of failures and mistakes and taking risks. Like if the culture has that sort of feel to it, that's a really important part of being willing to learn.
I love that. And this idea, we talk about this in the classroom, really growth mindset. you know, obviously individually for students, but I think growth mindset in organizations is really important, because in fostering that, we can kind of lead to higher engagement. People are willing to take risks, so they might be more innovative and, you know, showing that they can be adaptable. So I think new employees, new leaders, emerging leaders are willing to take on new responsibilities, view mistakes as learning experiences, and kind of supporting one another's growths. I think that that's a pretty important part of it. So I think if we can take on that, you know, reframing challenges as opportunities, and, you know, I think that approach gives individuals and organizations really the potential to not be kind of fixed in, and it really is development, right? We're developing through consistent effort and a willingness to learn. And I think if that's communicated, not just with the new people coming in, but with everyone, you know, building that organizational relationship, you know, that culture, I think is pretty important to, you know, overall success of the organization. And I like this idea of engaging everyone, not just the newbies in some of these experiences, because you're building a group. If you think about a sorority or fraternity or a club, you're building a cohesive group. And when people feel connected, they're more likely to stay somewhere than when they feel, you know, like they're not part of something. So building that sense of community, I think, is pretty important.
Absolutely.
I find like on the baseline level, one of the things that was missing at this location for the onboarding was honestly having like the most basic onboarding like outline for management. So a lot of times once you get into management, there's all this like structure and infrastructure on how to onboard people at an hourly level, and you know there's all this corporate training and culture and legal stuff that we go through, and then when it comes to the job, it's always location based. And in a business like mine where I'm a concessionaire, and not every piece of business with Aramark is the same. So we find commonalities. But one of the things we implemented here was having an onboarding, just like outline. Here's what the next 7 days are going to look like for you. Here's generally what we're going to cover in content. It gives a sense of confidence. It shows a little bit of organization and effort. It can still be loose and organic based on, you know, when their laptop comes in from corporate, or when we have access to systems that they need to learn and all of that stuff. Like you're not in full control of everything timeline wise, but giving that confidence is really important. I also thought, I just returned from Philadelphia last week, and I was at a meeting with my corporate headquarters reporting out on our business and how we're, you know, going to make changes year over year and how we're going to meet our goals. And one of the things that they provided me at a GM level was this great book, and this isn't like a commercial, but I thought it was great. It's Unreasonable Hospitality, and I don't know if you've read it, but it's all about, you know, giving people more than they expect, and how that's impactful. And that was a great example of having a piece of paper or something in hand that has intention, a general message, shows some organization and thoughtfulness. And I think it also sets a really strong tone for whoever that, you know, new leader is in their role, if they're a new leader altogether, new to the organization. And, you know, that is a message to me without having to be a full, you know, outline or you know, PowerPoint presentation.
It's such a simple tool, but you're right. And I'm thinking back on my own journey and how when I worked in higher education, I would get my agenda for the week of what was happening, who I was meeting with and why, like how I might interact with them. This way I could prepare and think about what are those questions I want to understand about that relationship. And when I think back on that onboarding experience, I think about how that set me up for success. I was able to really better create a stronger foundation with those individuals or with that particular activity that I might have been participating in. So I agree.
Kind of like a handwritten letter or a business card. You know, we can do a lot with technology and digitize it, but there's something about the tangible, you know, leave behind that you give someone that I think creates impact. And it's just a whole nother way of communicating and learning.
Jackie, you had something on the tip of your tongue.
Right. Before we leave this topic, I just wanted to add two things. One is piggybacking off what Alex said. I think though, like the top 5 leadership books, or whatever the whatever the industry and or just in general, like really fantastic leadership books. Like if a emerging leader is willing to read, I mean, talk about setting you up for success. And not only here, take this book, but let's have a conversation about it when you're done. And also a by when, read this by when, that would be something that could really keep them accountable. I absolutely love to do that in my coaching practice. And I also love that as part of an onboarding, for companies. The other thing just also is if there is someone leaving a position that this leader is coming into, creating that kind of relationship where there's obviously business intel being passed along, but some of the dynamics and some of the support and the training, that's not a new idea, but oftentimes the other person is off to the next thing, and that the one who's coming in doesn't get the benefit of having all of that insight.
It's a great point. I love all of that.
Yeah, and I love this idea of even like, we have this multi-phase onboarding, and maybe that first meet and greet involves, and here's a book because this is what we believe in, or here's, if you want to give it as a gift, I think that's pretty impressionable. Or it could be, here are a list of books, check, read one of these, and, we'll have a discussion in our, 60-day meeting about what you think, or if it's available on, Audible, or they can listen to it somehow, acknowledge that some people like to read, some people like to listen. So providing different venues for people to absorb that information, but getting everybody kind of on the same page in terms of what is the culture that you have there. And is it important for us to have, unreasonable hospitality, right? That we want people to be thinking that it's elevated. So it isn't just, this is how we do things at our organization, but also we want to improve and be better. And, are these some resources that if you're interested in, personal development, and I believe personal development is professional development, we're investing in ourselves. So if that's part of the organization's culture, that should be communicated early on, that we really believe in supporting. If there's assistance that you need, training that you need, we're here to support you and provide resources.
And thinking along those lines with professional and personal development, I think having a mentor or coach that working with emerging leaders is really important to support their growth and development. So I'm curious what you all think is the role of a mentor or coach, and how can organizations effectively implement some sort of mentoring coaching program to support those rising leaders? Paige, can I have you start us off with your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think, mentorship, that's the advice that I give students, and then also industry members, find a mentor, be a mentor. That's the advice that I give. And I think that person can help somebody feel more comfortable. It enhances kind of our social integration, right? And I think it really fosters cross-functional relationships. My mentor doesn't necessarily have to be within the organization. I mean, that's definitely a buddy system is always beneficial, but just encouraging people to identify a mentor to help them, kind of be a resource for new hires, whether that's internal, somebody they can ask questions. Maybe they don't feel comfortable going to Alex and asking the question, maybe they want to get, okay, well, what's the background on this? And they feel more comfortable going to someone that would be a peer versus a supervisor. But I think having a mentor, a buddy from a different department, might be able to provide company culture, advice on what the culture is like, or share that, institutional knowledge or organizational, history. I think that that's pretty important. I have run into where mentors were assigned and there was some resistance to that. People didn't feel like, well, I don't want to be involved in this. So I think you offer people autonomy, that here's this resource and they have choice. We want to, invest in you and provide you the support that you need. So I don't know, is it assigning somebody? You can provide suggestions, like here's what a mentorship looks like. Maybe you want to meet you know, once a quarter, maybe you want to meet, you know, twice on Zoom, twice in person, you know, provide some suggestions, but I think it's best that you kind of leave it up to the individual. Ask people who might want to be mentors, because that could be providing opportunities for people to grow within your organization, giving them kind of a leadership role in that sense. But I think autonomy is important in encouraging motivation for people to do things. So offering them that choice and providing the resources is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Jackie, what are your thoughts on that concept of mentorship? And
I love the mentor idea, and I love being able to, like Paige is suggesting, you know, choose the right chemistry, because that is so, I mean, they're going to really absorb so much more if they really connect with the person. So I think that's important in both mentoring and coaching, that the mentor and the coach also feel this kind of synergy, you know, with the person. So I think that's really important. I do think so I've seen where it's choose your own, but it's not optional. Like, you know, you've got 3 months to find a coach, or you've got 3 months to find a, you know, and here are the resources. Here are the different people we'll give you. So I also think that making it selection process be the one that you choose, but the actual having one is not a choice, right? This is what's going to set you up for success. You don't even realize how much it's going to set you up. So find your person. I also like the idea, whether the mentor and or the coach could be this, but it could be that you have a buddy system with the mentor, but there's something really important about having an accountability partner. So, right. So if you're making these changes and you're growing and you're learning and it's edgy, you know, having an accountability partner that can both champion you and also challenge you, and then be a check-in point for like, how'd it go? And did you do what you said you were going to do? Did you have that conscious conversation, that difficult conversation? So, so both the buddy learning and growing, but also the accountability piece.
I love that. Alex, what's on your
think,
mind?
yeah, I think so. I tend to be someone that's like shies away from like organized, you know, programming. But what I do, my whole approach to mentorship with my team is I try to influence them. So it's more like, hey, you know, you should talk to Jackie. She had a really great approach on XYZ. She might be able to kind of like connect the dots for you. Or you know what? I have an idea. I think Paige did something similar, and maybe just kind of reach out to her. I'm sure she would be happy to kind of like answer some questions, help you, you know. And I feel like sometimes like showing people how to draw on others, you create this whole like mentorship infrastructure for them. But really it's valuable resource, right? And you know, we're not all reinventing the wheel. I mean, people have done my job on this site since 1913. So like I don't have to reinvent the wheel as this general manager or whatever for this historic property. I just have to do it, you know, keep people on track and make sure that we have a common goal to work through, and then make sure I'm providing resources for people. So I think mentorship is all about resources. And I think the other part of that is to any conversations I have with any manager or employee always come from a place of mentorship. So it's really management, but I always make sure those conversations have a tone of mentorship, and always outlining kind of why I would steer them a different direction, or maybe why something was a good decision and we need to continue to build on that. I think having those, like positioning those conversations from a mentorship perspective is really important, rather than just being so management focused. Like, hey, I need you to hit this deadline. I need to do this. It's like talking about behavior, modeling behavior, and then connecting with where we've seen success prior.
Love that. Jackie looked pensive, so I'm curious.
Before we move on, I just wanted to I wanted to maybe have a little dialogue, just to determine or to discern the difference between mentoring and coaching, because it's a little bit of a slippery slope. Because mentors can use coaching and coaching can use mentoring, right? So I think in the purest sense, mentors are going to have a lot of experience in something that you're trying to learn how to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to offer that kind of wisdom and, and that kind of consultative, relationship. The coach, on the other hand, in the purest sense of coaching, is really just drawing out your own genius. It's really just drawing out what what you will already sense is the right thing to do. And so I wanted to say that because the truest, purest sense of coaching is really about asking powerful questions to access the wisdom that you have within. And somebody, I can't remember if it was Paige or Alex, but oftentimes if you are the one coming out with it, you're the one sort of designing it or coming to this understanding and this knowing, you're so much more likely to support what you've created. So you talk about getting people on board. Yeah, you're the one who said it. So that sounds like a great idea. Let's go do that.
Absolutely. I love that.
I love that too. And thank you for drawing that distinction, because I agree there can be overlap in terms of how those terms get used or perceived, but they are very distinct differences. And some people are great coaches and not great mentors, or by the other way around. And so it is important to understand that distinction, especially if you're a new leader rising through the ranks and you haven't had a mentor or a coach before. Understanding that distinction, I think, is important as you're kind of figuring out what's the right path for your development and support moving forward. So
I like Alex's style, though, in the sense of he's making that connection, like building that relationship, but not in a you will do this kind of way. It's like, hey, you may want to make that connection. And I think how we approach it, how we package it can make a difference. And again, allowing people to feel like they're having that choice in what they're doing. You're connecting them by just saying, you should talk to her about this, and then let them, figure it out. And then, as Jackie said, they think it's their idea, and then they own it because it's their idea instead of our idea, right?
It'll grow. Yeah.
When I rejoined the company, I left Aramark in 2018, and then I came back this year. And so, they had a few new programs, and one of their onboarding programs for all levels of management within the company is a co-star, and you have someone that you are kind of paired up with. It's meant to be a mentor, someone that can help you, answer questions, whatnot. But it wasn't explained to me. They're like, oh, so and so's your co-star, just set up a call. And we both got on the call, and it's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. So there was a connectivity issue. Like the intention is there, but how are we approaching it? And I take experiences like that often, and I'll kind of assess for myself, and I'm like, what could have made this more effective? It's a good program, but maybe having my hiring manager go through and make a more organic connection to this person, and maybe outline why I would need to reach out to them and some of their background, and maybe even a three-way conversation first for introduction, so it feels more organic. I just think approach sometimes is really important, how you're delivering the message.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I think something that I think is really interesting, and Jackie, you actually brought this concept up in an email exchange about the beginner's mindset, and it made me reflect back. It actually brought me back to one of my mentorship experiences where my mentor was like, you don't have to know it all. Like, it is okay that you're starting from scratch. And even though you've got these great experiences, it's okay to say, I don't know, and I'm learning. And so I think mentorship is super important. And it sounds like we all are in agreement about that, but I think it's also a really great place to help leaders embrace that idea of that beginner's mindset. Thinking about having a level of openness and curiosity and not having preconceived notions about what you have to bring to the table or what you should be doing. And so I'm curious if you all agree with this. And if so, how can leaders maintain a beginner mindset while they're still leveraging their expertise and experience? Because, right, that's still important. That still has weight when you're rising through the organization. I'm Alex, you're, I don't know, everyone looks like they have something on the tip of their tongue. I saw Alex first, so I'll let you share more.
Well, I just have to say again, just walking into this role 7 months ago, I had a lot of people that have a lot of experience that I am now, managing and leading. And I have a different leadership style, and I do have very fresh eyes and perspective on where, some of the change that needs to happen on site. And it's funny how oftentimes they've kind of just through natural selection and within the organizational changes that have happened over the years, they have a way of doing things, and this is the best way, and they're not, but there are new resources that come to mind that they can harness, but maybe they're not open to it. And so, it's been a really interesting journey over the last 7 months with that core group of leadership that has been here for so long, and I draw on so much expertise from them specific to this location, but also kind of helping guide them to be open-minded, have that, that fresh perspective on their role, and maybe be open to new resources that can help them be successful or find efficiency. That's been a real challenge for me. But it's also been really open dialogue and discussion. And, I think, cadence and how you communicate is really important. And, but yeah, it's the old adage of teaching an old dog new tricks. I mean, there's a reason they're doing something a certain way, because that is the way, whether it's their, collective bargaining agreement with their employees that they have to, contend with, or at my location specifically, there's a lot of California state legislation that we have to be sensitive to, and as the concessionaire to ensure that we're aligned with. And so there's a lot of factors that they consider to get to where they currently are. And so opening up their eyes to other resources and opportunity to maybe find efficiency is important. And that's a different approach with each person, but always being sensitive and connected and aware of what they bring to the table, because I won't be successful without those individuals that have been here and have that historic reference for me, so it's interesting.
Yes, I love that. Jackie, you looked like you had some notes and aha moments.
Yeah, I was piggybacking off of what Alex said, because I do think that innovation requires it. Having a beginner's mind. I think innovation, really requires it, especially now, when just what you knew last year doesn't even matter. I mean, it matters, but it's just changing so quickly. I think that having a beginner's mind as a leader is a really good example for creating a culture of curiosity. Right? Like, tell me everything.
Right.
And then I also think that once upon a time, and I've run across this not only in myself, but in other people that I've worked with, the leader somehow, and you said this, Eileen, feels like they need to know something so that I'm thinking about one client in particular, thinking you need to be the smartest person in the room. But the real leader knows that they're never the smartest person in the room, or they shouldn't be the smartest person in the room. If they are the smartest person in the room, then they need to get some new team members. But
100%.
right. But also, the leader is really, with a beginner's mind, can draw out the genius, like a coach can draw out the genius from each person at the table. And I remember having a mentor who told me that we would sit around this table, and he said, no one of us is as smart as all of us together. So I have to, allow everyone to be right and only partially in order for me to keep listening. and to have that beginner's mind. So I just know that that's like really essential.
Yeah, I really like that because, Socrates said he is a wise man who knows he knows nothing. And it's this idea of really practicing humility, acknowledging there's always more to learn. Because if you think you know everything, nobody wants to be around you. So if you want to be successful, I think, or good leaders are receptive, to new ideas, and they encourage their team members to share their insights freely. And if you come off as knowing everything, they don't want to share with you because you're not going to be open to listening. I always start, and I love this idea of curiosity because I'm a very curious person, and I think curiosity is great because it can really morph organizations when we think about things from different angles. So kind of always keeping on top of trends and that. But I think we should reframe it instead of beginner's mindset. And I'm reminded of this in Alex coming into an organization where he has people who have been there a long time. So if we reframe it as this growth mindset, and that's how I start the class off. I was like, everybody, in this classroom, should be growing and making mistakes, and we're all learning together. I'm learning every day. Just because I have my PhD doesn't mean that I know everything. Some people with their PhD may come off that way, but that's not the case. So I think if Alex went in and said to his team, I believe in growth mindset, because if you say beginner to somebody who's been at Asilomar for 20 years, they're thinking, well, I don't have to think like that. I'm not a beginner. I know what I'm doing. So this idea of blending the curiosity of a beginner, in a sense, with the insights and experience of the people who have already been there, I think we can adapt and change and inspire, a culture of learning among everybody on the team, and not just the new people. And I like this idea of fresh eyes. What can we learn? And, working with small rural communities, going in there with fresh eyes, they were like, well, who'd want to come and visit to this place? And I was like, look at this river that you have. It's amazing. You guys could be doing kayaking. I'm seeing it with this lens, and they're kind of seeing it as, well, that's just in our backyard. We don't think anything of it. So if we think about that's looking at a destination, but teams, looking at it with fresh eyes, I think that that's a really, good thing that we're open to that. So I think if we shift it and say growth mindset, it opens it up for everybody to be a piece of it.
I have to tell you, I love the concept of growth mindset. You gave me a good phrase to use. So thank you. And then I love drawing out the genius. I mean,
Yeah.
it's brilliant. And I wouldn't have articulated it like that, Jackie, but I think that's great because it is, naturally what I would do in a group environment, right? But harnessing people's experience and drawing out their own genius and keeping a growth mindset, all of those are both really key learnings for me today.
I love that. So I know we're kind of getting towards the end of our hour together. And so I'm actually going to put all of you on the spot. I'm curious, is there one other piece of wisdom, best practice, anything you've seen around supporting emerging leaders that you didn't get to share today that you want to make sure the audience hears? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, so I can give you a few seconds to think about it. But
I have to tell you, I started out like this, and it's just that it's always been, gosh, it's people's Achilles heel. Not being self-aware is like being able to look at yourself, read the room, see how people react with you. If you keep getting adverse reaction to every instruction, then you need to change the way you're messaging it, delivering I just feel like in leadership and management, especially if you're very new to management, it's your first time asking people to do things. I always ask people to do things, so I'm very specific about it. And when I don't get it done, I'm like, okay, let me explain. I'm asking you to do it. It's really actually not, because you don't get to choose not to do it. It has to be done, but I'm going to always word it this way because that's nice. So, I think understanding your how you deliver things and how people receive it, and then being super self-aware, being able to kind of take inventory and adjust is key to strong leadership, because it's not always your way or the highway. You need to be able to shift, and I don't want to say be a chameleon, but just be sensitive to the group around you. Not everybody's built the same, wired the same, or experienced the same way. So knowing how to draw out the genius and keep a growth mindset is all about self-awareness as well.
Absolutely.
Or Paige, any closing thoughts on your end, especially again, you're developing these leaders again.
Yeah, I think it's really this idea of leading by example. I mean, I appreciate that Alex is sharing a book and he's excited about the book. So if we're talking about staying competitive and being adaptable, you know, having a learning focused culture, I think is effective leadership, and showing that we're doing those things ourselves, not just, you know, we're walking the talk kind of thing. I think that that's pretty important. And I think that can foster, in an organization, can really foster an environment where we have leaders at all levels and, you know, getting those fresh perspectives all the time, not getting stale. So I like that idea of that culture of continuous learning and development.
And Jackie, what parting words do you have for our audience today?
So what I've learned through my experience coaching, and also from my experience being a leader, I think that the number one competency for leaders, especially in this new world, is relatedness, and how you relate to yourself, how you relate to other, and how you relate to the all. And to really understand what right relationship means, that it's like, that's how you experience everything, through your relationship with it. And so really developing, you know, to Alex's point, that self-awareness, whether it's self-administered 360s, you know, always checking in, asking for feedback, or what Paige was saying about growth mindset, like really understanding what does it mean to be in right relationship. And that, I think, will take leaders very, very far. It could even create peace on earth.
I love peace on earth.
I love
I
that.
vote for that. That's amazing.
Right? Peaceful with yourself.
Yeah.
If you've got the right relationship, there's no way to harm. There, you just can't, it's not possible.
Yeah.
So right relationship and relatedness, and learning more about that, I think it would be really wonderful.
I love that. This is all fantastic advice, and everything you all have shared today has been, I have another page of notes like I did from the last session. So always learning, and I really appreciate that. I think emerging that gap that I have been seeing, and I think a lot of us have seen in that emerging leader development, is real. And there's so many opportunities to help these leaders just become so much stronger and lead with intentionality and really take organizations to the next level. And I think it begins with onboarding in that first 90 days and really setting them up for success. But actually, it probably begins even earlier with the work that like Paige is doing at the university level to help develop those leaders so they're fully prepared to enter the workforce. And there's just so much more work to do. So I really appreciate all of your insights today. Thank you to everyone who joined in and who is probably listening to this after the fact. But we at Delegate are really committed to continuing this dialogue and to continue the work to help support our rising stars and ensure that they have the skills and tools they need to be successful. We have some great workshops and coaching programs that I think are really beneficial, and I'd be happy to chat with anyone about those. But I encourage everyone to watch your inboxes for the recording. I will send it out after, so you can listen to it again and pull out the nuggets that you missed or wanted to listen to again. But thank you, Jackie, Paige, and Alex, for your time and insights and spending your hour with us. And I really, truly appreciate it. So everyone have a great rest of your day. And thank you again for joining.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
To be